Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to be getting a news conference from the attorneys who were handling the lawsuit, the class action lawsuit between Norfolk Southern and the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs being the residents, the business owners of the people of East Palestine. It was last February. Don't have to remind very many of you of the tragedy that the just devastation that happened after that train derailment, the fire, the subsequent burning off of toxic chemicals and what it did to that community and what it continues to do. It was announced yesterday morning that a settlement had been reached between the attorneys and Norfolk Southern for $600 million, but it wasn't explained terms. We believe we're going to get that now, so let's take you live to today's news conference.
Today with us, we have our co-lead counsel, along with myself, Beth Graham, Seth Katz, and Jane Conroy. And we're really excited to tell you all about what we feel is an outstanding result, an outstanding resolution for the people in the community of East Palestine and the surrounding areas. I know there are a ton of questions just from the incoming questions that we have gotten so far, and we want to be able to address as many of those as we can to talk about how this will actually work, where the money goes, and how this $600 million resolution is going to go 100% directly back to the community in the way that it's set up. And so with that, I want to start with turning it over to Beth Graham to kind of tell us high level how this works, what the deal encompasses, and what to expect.
Thanks,
Beth?
Mike. As Mike said, we think this is an outstanding result. It involves a $600 million payment to the community. That's in addition to anything that Norfolk Southern may have already committed to the community, and in addition to anything that they may voluntarily do going forward. What the settlement encompasses is essentially a class. It was filed as class action, and it encompasses a class of all residents within 20 miles, with an emphasis and a different allocation program being administered for the first 10 miles, and then separately to the folks who are between 10 and 20 miles. It also contemplates payments to businesses who can prove that they lost money as a result of the incident. And it has a fourth component, which is a voluntary non-class component that it provides for personal injury payments. And that component is designed for folks who have been potentially exposed to the toxins that were in the community and choose to participate, release those claims in exchange for payment that will hopefully provide money for them both now and in the future, if in fact, decades down the road, they develop any kind of problems. We created this program in concert with many experts with whom we've been working over the past year. We feel that the components accurately reflect what the community is looking for and what they deserve. And we think that the money will, at this point, getting it to them at this point and getting it to them quickly was a concern that we heard over and over again from our clients in the community. So we're pleased that we were able to achieve it now, but we have a lot of work ahead of us as the settlement was just reached, as you probably know, this past weekend. I'm going to turn it over to Seth to talk a little bit about the community reaction that we've gotten so far, because we've been out there over the past few days.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Seth Katz, and I'm from Berg Simpson, Eldridge, Hirsch, and Jardine. As part of the settlement, the class representatives who are members of the community were consulted. They were advised of this settlement. Over the course of the year of litigation, we've worked with them closely. They've all been deposed. We thank them for the effort that they put in on behalf of themselves and the members of their own community. They are all very happy with the outcome. They understand how we got here. During the course of the litigation, we spoke with them, what was important for them, what were their concerns, what were things they needed to have, and we worked those in the negotiations. So when we've advised them, we know that they are all very supportive, very happy, and think this is a fantastic outcome to happen so quickly And given where we are, given the risks attendant to Ohio and Sixth Circuit law, they're all very, very pleased.
Hi, this is Jane Conroy from Simmons Hanley Conroy, and I just want to state that so much has been done over the past year with respect to the litigation, but this is just the beginning of the settlement portion of this case. And we, the attorneys, our teams, are going to be present, as we have been in the past, in East Palestine to go through individually questions. We'll have town meetings. We'll have the opportunity to speak to individuals and business owners and explain the process in detail, one-on-one, so that everyone appreciates what this settlement covers, how to present the damages that you may have experienced. All of that will be done over the coming months. And so we are really at the beginning. And I know some of you may have questions, but what I would say even at the outset is give us time to work through this with the members of the community so they can appreciate that we all have fairness in mind. And certainly Judge Pearson in Youngstown, our federal judge overseeing this case, is very, very involved in this situation, and she will be overseeing all of this as well.
One component I would like to also mention is that this settlement only relates to the private class action pending in front of Judge Pearson. There are other litigations like the action brought by the Attorney General for cleanup costs and public nuisance. Those are unaffected by this settlement.
And just to put another finer point on that, the $600 million is not going to clean up. That's a separate EPA, Ohio Attorney General issue.
Okay, we're gonna open it up for questions now. You can either type it in the Q&A or raise your hand and we'll go down and let everybody ask their question. We're going to start with Madison. I will allow you to talk. Please state your name and what outlet you're with.
Hi there, this is Madison with 21 WFMJ in Youngstown, and I have just a few questions. First off, how much of a cut of this money is going to attorney fees? And how are you figuring out the breakdown of which residents and businesses get what amount of money in each of those three categories?
I could take it. Oh, go ahead, Beth.
I'll take part of it. With respect to how we're calculating the compensation that each individual family or resident will receive, we're working with experts who do this for a living. Essentially, we are coming up with a formula, an allocation formula that works on a point system, and it gives higher weight value to folks who are living in closer proximity to the derailment and to the vent and burn. We're taking into account household composition. If you had children, how many people were in your house, if you were working in the community. There's a number of factors that are weighted, and we're working with financial experts to translate that into dollars. So it's a fair and impartial process that is designed to compensate folks who were affected the most with the highest values. With respect to businesses, businesses will have a straightforward ability to show their loss using, last year's taxes versus the year of the incidence taxes, something akin to that. And obviously, if folks have, extraordinary losses that they're able to bring to the table, we will take those into consideration as well. So that's essentially how we are trying to compensate the folks within the 20 miles in a very fair and impartial way.
And
With respect to the attorney fees, that's Judge Pearson oversees that. And so that remains in her discretion.
And can I ask another question? If someone, like, for example, if someone lives a mile from the derailment site and they take this payment now, and let's just say down the road, people develop cancer, this person, for example, gets cancer, would taking this payment be their last opportunity to be paid? Or can they get paid more in the future?
So if they take the personal injury settlement now, it would release future claims. And the reason we've structured it the way we did is so that folks, as you probably know, the latency period for a lot of these chemicals and the risk to the community, according to our experts, is not as great as we feared. And to the extent that individuals are going to, if there are individuals who unfortunately do get sick, it will be years from now. So the payment would cover those future expenses. And we're also going to be putting the community in touch with people who will help manage, if they are concerned, manage a portion of the money so that it is in trust for them and that it will grow. So if down the road something happens, they will have been compensated and have money for medical care.
Okay, thanks. And then the only, what's the legal process moving forward for finalizing the settlement agreement and getting the money out? Like what comes next?
So we are in the process of papering the agreement. We're working with the lawyers at Norfolk Southern to finalize the terms of the agreement. All of the essential terms have been fleshed out, and now we're just going to, put it in an agreement that we all execute. We then present it to the court. The judge has to rule on it's what's called preliminary approval. If she gives the deal her preliminary blessing, then notice goes out to the community. And we can talk about that in a moment, what we're going to do in terms of being out in the community and working with the community once they get notice of what they need to do. Claims packets will go out to them by mail and will be available at community centers that we're setting up. And then folks will have a period of time to decide if they want to participate. And if they choose to participate, they fill out the claim package. We, of course, will be there to help them with that. They don't need to hire lawyers. They don't need to hire us. We will be out in the community assisting. And once all of the claims are in and we finalize the allocations, we then go to Judge Pearson for what's called final approval of the settlement. And assuming that the settlement meets the legal criteria for being finally approved, then our claims administrator starts sending out checks or handing out checks. And we are hoping that if we work quickly and efficiently, that could well be this year.
Next, Jerry, please say your name and what outlet you're with.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for doing this. My name's Jerry Ricciuti. I'm with WKBN and WYTV, the ABC and CBS affiliates in Youngstown. I saw a report, and perhaps you can clarify it, that mentions in the 20-mile radius around what we've been calling here in Youngstown Ground Zero, there's 100,000 people that could share in this. Is that, number one, accurate? And number two, how do you determine just the notion of do you already have to be in the class, or is this something that, as Attorney Graham was saying, people will have an opportunity to essentially sign up for that?
This is Beth Graham. So if I understand your question correctly, relief is available to everybody within a 20-mile radius who was in, the East Palestine area on the date of the derailment and the vent and burn. That's how we've defined it. Those individuals will get notice. So nobody needs to sign up if that's the question. There'll be a notice program. People will either get it in the mail or hear about it on television or social media, and will receive a claim form. And then there will be a series of questions to to confirm that they in fact are part of the class based on their geographic location. And for example, if you owned a property in East Palestine, but you rent it and you weren't anywhere near Ohio at the time, you would not be included in the class because you wouldn't meet the definition. So I think that answers your question.
I think
Well,
just add a point.
I'm saying, excuse me, I just, not to interrupt, but I just, to clarify that, for example, our TV station physically sits within that 20-mile radius. And those of us who either were here that night or live, when you look at 20 miles around ground zero, it takes up quite a bit of territory in neighboring counties, neighboring states, because now you're into Western Pennsylvania. And I'm not even quite sure how, but 20 miles from ground zero is quite a bit of territory. So you will be reaching out to all the people that live and or work in that area, or it'll be up to media like ourselves to let people know how to come forward and make their case.
I see. We will be sending out direct mail based on census data to individuals within, and it's not just a 20-mile circle. We have a map, if you will, of where our experts show the contamination went. We will be sending out direct notice, and then we will have what's called a notice program that gets approved by the court, where we will be doing informational outreach on media, social media, and the like, so that we are erring on the side of being over-inclusive. So if individuals even believe that they should participate, they can come forward, and then there'll be a series of questions that they will need to answer.
When
We'll
will
also have a facility in East Palestine at the Family Assistance Center, and we will be conducting town meetings, that sort of thing. So there'll be a very rigorous notice program that will be overseen by Judge Pearson.
when will you start the direct mailings and have sessions at that Family Assistance Center?
Those cannot start until we receive preliminary approval from the court. But once we go through that process, which we're hoping will be this month and planning to have accomplish it this month, that's when we can start, and we will start right away.
The contemplation, Jerry, is 14 days from a preliminary approval order. We will be getting notice out.
And you're hoping that's this month. One last question, if I can. You mentioned the medical injury portion of this settlement. And just to clarify what you mentioned to my colleague from the other station in Youngstown, if I don't have a claim to make now, but 5 years ago or 5 years from now, I develop a cancer, am I precluded from making that claim? Or how does that work? Because as you said correctly, Attorney Graham, many of these cases the medical cases will develop years from now. How do people know to say in 2024 that what they get in 2034 was caused by the train derailment?
I think that's a fair question, Jerry. And it's actually something that we really thought about when we approached the resolution on this. And the difference when we're talking about the personal injury claims specifically is those are opt-in versus opt-out. So a normal class structure is you would opt out. This is an opt-in situation. So each person can think about their individualized risk and what they want to pursue. And if they choose not to opt in, then those rights stay available. What Ms. Graham was talking about, which is really important, is in the event that they go, look, we have a latency period of 10 years. We're able to take a certain amount of money now, invest it, and be able to cover anything that happens in the future regarding that. It's a personalized decision, but it will be up to the community to make that decision. And for that very reason, because people have different concerns, people are in different stages of their life, and it's things that has to be taken a little bit individually, given the gravity of what we're dealing with.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to Rich.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rich McHugh. I'm a correspondent with News Nation. Mr. Katz, earlier I heard you say that people are class members are happy with the result. I'm in East Palestine today, and I haven't spoken with a single person who actually believes this is a good settlement. To the resident who says with 100,000 people in this class, that amounts to a few $1,000s per person. This is too little too soon and will in no way cover medical expenses for cancers that inevitably develop a year or two down the line. What's your response to them?
Thanks, Rich. To those members of the community, we understand that perspective. We do. We're not minimizing it. We understand it. We took it into account. I would ask them to be patient and work through the process with us and learn more before casting a final judgment of whether or not this is the right settlement for them. We've worked hard on it. We've looked at it from a lot of different ways. As I said, we've spoken with the class representatives throughout the process. And we do strongly feel that this is a very, very, very good result for this community to get the money that's going to be distributed to them now without litigation risk, without dealing with many of the legal issues that are frankly a very uphill battle. So I would ask for patience. I would ask for them to listen, have an open mind, and learn more. And I don't say that in a way that I'm trying to diminish their concerns, their fears about the future. But as we've just responded to on some of the prior questions, we've taken that into account.
And on that point, Rich, I think it's also important to remember that this is not just a simple math problem where we're going to divide the amount of money by the amount of people within that potential zone. We're working with claims administrators to work at the people that were impacted the most, get the most, and it works its way out. So it's not as simple as just saying there's this many people and there's this much money. What does each person get? That's not the intent here. And I know that Beth and Jane could talk more about that as well.
Thank you.
Next, we'll do WOIO News.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with Cleveland 19. I've been speaking with a professor at Case Western Reserve University. He had two major surprises, even though not all the details had been released yesterday. Two major surprises. He was surprised at how low the number was, $600 million. Understanding this was a mediation over the course of 3 days, what did you start at? Did you start at $1 billion? Where was the midpoint? Where was the high point? And what did it come to? The second part that he was surprised that this had gotten approval was because that formula, that point system you're talking about, it was not on paper. So for a judge before a judge can sign off on this, he would expect that formula needs to be in place before the sign off. So again, two parts. What did you start at as a high point? Were you asking for $2 billion, $1 billion, and we ended up at $600 million? And again, why has this formula not been in place with the announcement made? Thank you.
So I'll take part of it. I think, first of all, with respect to the mediation, it was 3 in-person sessions over the course of many months, followed up by many, many phone calls and Zoom meetings. The settlement actually came as a result of the mediator's proposal. We worked with retired Judge Lane Phillips, who is nationally recognized as an effective mediator. The back and forth is confidential. We all agreed, both sides agreed going in that we would not disclose to anyone what happened in the mediation, but I think it's fair to say that they started very low and we started higher. So we got to where we are as a result of Judge Phillips' mediator's recommendation. With respect to the allocation system, that is going to be in writing. The deal was just, I don't know what professor you're speaking to, but the deal, it's not uncommon in class actions to reach a deal in principle. Publicly traded companies then need to announce it in principle, which they did, and we are still working on the details, but all of that will become public and be part of court filings. This was again concluded in principle on Saturday morning, and today is Wednesday. So as I believe Seth and Mike asked for patience, I would ask those who are either in favor or critical of the settlement to give us some time to work out the details and actually read what's going to be put forth. This isn't as simple as saying $600 million divided by X number of people and everybody gets the same. That is not at all the case.
And Judge Pearson will not approve this settlement if she's unhappy with what this all looks like. So it's early days.
Regarding, just the comment that 600 is low, I think when the details become fully out, you'll go back to that same professor and he'll say, oh, I didn't understand some of these limitations that the Sixth Circuit puts on the attorneys and where these damages were coming, because we're not talking about the environmental cleanup. That case is still ongoing. We're not talking about individual cancer cases right now. Those cases have not happened. They've not vested. So we are talking about the very specific claims that we brought. And we hope that when you do take it back, the professor goes, you know what, that is an absolutely great result for this community.
Hi, can you guys hear me? This is Lena Lai from WKYC in Cleveland. I understand that you guys say that it's not a math problem, but can you give us some kind of ballpark? Potentially how many claimants there potentially could be, and how much would each get on the high end potentially and on the low end potentially?
That's not something that we can do right now. That's going to involve the next several months of discussions and talking and working with our expert and looking at different components of the settlement and eligibility.
So not even a ballpark. I mean, the person closest to ground zero gets $1 million, person 20 miles away gets $10. I mean, so not even a ballpark?
No, and it wouldn't be fair to give that without knowing individually what these residents and members of the community have gone through. It wouldn't be a fair thing to give an answer to.
I think it is fair to say that the folks who are at, as you put it, ground zero will receive significantly more than the folks who were, 20 miles away watching it at home on their television. I mean, that's how the allocation program is being designed, to get the money into the hands of the folks who are most damaged. But as Jane said, to give precise or even ballpark figures right now would be doing a disservice to the community, because people will be either, expecting more or expecting less. And we'd rather give them actual numbers so that they can make an informed decision and not deal with speculation.
Next, we'll go to Camry Nelson.
Hi, my name is Camry, and I'm a reporter with Spectrum News. I guess I missed the initial discussion. Can you guys talk about how the settlement came about? I know we can't, I just listened to how not really saying who's going to get what, but if you guys can give me just an overview, please, that would be great.
Sure. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by how it came about. I mean, we filed, lawsuits. They were consolidated with Judge Pearson. We've been litigating this case for over a year, taking testimony, working with experts, et cetera, all developing the evidence that would take us to trial, which would probably which Judge Pearson believed would occur in the winter of 2025. Within the context of very hard-fought litigation, we also entered into negotiations, and as Beth mentioned, a nationally known mediator, retired Judge Phillips. And that's the process by which we reached this settlement with Norfolk Southern. It's civil litigation is, a combination of working on the liability case and developing the evidence, and oftentimes, along the same lines, working through the possibility of a settlement or a trial.
Thank you.
I have an answer or a question from the chat. Ben from Gannett. His question is, when is the earliest residents and businesses could expect checks?
Thanks, Ben, for the question. I think we said it a little bit earlier. We've got to go through some of the processes with the court, including the preliminary approval, the notice period, the claims period, and then a final approval hearing in front of the court. And it's at that point in time, should the court determine we've met all of the obligations, that the settlement is fair and reasonable, that Judge Pearson would, in fact, only at that point approve the settlement. And after that is when checks for awards based on claims submitted would be sent to the members of the community that submitted their claims. And we are hoping that it would be before the end of the year, based on everything that we are going to be working hard to accomplish in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, and the next several months.
Next, we'll take Steve.
Hello, this is Steve Mellon. I'm with the Pittsburgh Union Progress. I had a couple of questions about the plaintiffs themselves. Can you tell us who they are, who the plaintiffs in this case are?
Steve, I think our folks from Morgan & Morgan can send you the complaint, and they're all identified there.
Okay. Can you tell me anything about their situations? Are they from ground zero? Do they have kids? Some of those kinds of things. Can you tell us a little bit about their situations?
Many do. There were some that were trackside with very young kids and were out of their home for an extended period of time. There are some that kind of moved out from that trackside community to farther out because they were longtime residents, multi-generational residents of the community. Obviously, there are businesses in there because we've got the business component. So they do run the true cross-section of these communities.
And they're listed in the lawsuit itself?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that available to us?
It is. It's publicly filed, but we can make sure that the folks that organize this can get a copy to you.
Thanks so much.
Now we have another question from Chris at the Huffington Post. There are a lot of larger towns in the 20-mile radius. Any sense of how many individuals, businesses could ultimately receive payments?
That will depend. We don't have an estimate. That will depend on the criteria, what our experts provide to us, and the eligibility. But they will have the opportunity to file a claim and discuss the claim.
Next, I'm gonna Nick.
Hi, how's it going? I just dropped my question in the chat too, but my name's Nick Stonecipher. I'm a member of Penn State's News Lab. What metrics for payment are you tracking, and is one metric being rewarded more than another? Also, how are you tracking who has and hasn't been impacted by the derailment? Do people need to voluntarily claim that they've been affected, or are you doing work to find them on your own?
So I think if by metric, you mean the allocation formula that we were discussing earlier, we're working with experts to create an algorithm, if you will, that will award points or weight the severity of the situation and individual circumstances, so that the folks who are, for example, closer to ground zero will be compensated in a greater manner than the folks who are 20 miles away and weren't anywhere near East Palestine. So we are working on that, so it'll be a uniform and impartial system, but depending on the criteria and how we identify folks based on their residence population data and what they submit to us in their claim form, we'll make an assessment. Folks have to come forward and submit a claim, and they have to sign under penalty of perjury to confirm that they actually are, residents and that they live at the place where we think they live and the like. So, to some extent, it is, I guess, an honor system, but we are going to be seeking and confirming information on our own, doing our own due diligence to make sure that all of the compensation goes to the right people.
Quick follow-up, if that's okay. This is kind of, it's been 1 year since the derailment. At what level are you going to be tracking impact 3 or 4 years down the line with this specific settlement? If someone doesn't realize they've been affected until 3 or 4 years down the line, and they don't, let's say, for example, get some sort of chemical exposure diagnosis or, find that their home was devalued, is this specific settlement going to help them?
So, Nick, thank you. If you're talking about from the personal injury component, someone right now elects not to participate, not to submit a personal injury claim because they haven't suffered a personal injury claim, then should they unfortunately come down with an injury that can be traced back to the derailment and the exposure, their ability to pursue that personal injury claim will be unimpacted. If, however, they do participate voluntarily in the current personal injury claim, they will be releasing future claims. So I'm not sure if that's the question you were asking, but that was how I interpreted it. Obviously there will be levels of proof that are required for all claim submissions, including proof of residency. There'll be some kind of proof of injury. There will be some level of proof. Obviously, if someone elects to not participate in the settlement, but pursue a personal injury claim later on down the road, they would have to file a lawsuit and comply with all of the requirements of proving a lawsuit, as opposed to participation in the settlement, which is a much more streamlined process.
And Nick, if your concern is that there might be homeowners within the 20-mile radius that are not aware of this, that is why there's a very robust notice system that goes out. As Beth mentioned, direct mailings, there'll be social media, there'll be town meetings and that sort of thing. So we anticipate that there will not be people who are not aware of this possibility in the coming months. And also the court approves the notice provision to make sure that it's, wide in scope and robust.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna have to end it here. Thank you so much for joining us. If anybody else still has more questions, please email us at pr@forthepeople.com.
Dan DeRose with 19 News as we wrap up this news conference. So we do get a little bit more information that we did not have yesterday, specifically the concern that was coming from, and you heard one of the reporters who said they were on the ground and that nobody is happy with this. There is this idea that if you take the $600 million and you take how many people live in that 20-mile radius, we've been hearing the number as 100,000, and you divide 100,000 into 600 million, that's not how this is going to work. This is not going to be an equal share settlement. There is going to be a point system. If you live 0.1 miles from ground zero, you're going to get a lot of points for that, and so on, as opposed to somebody who lives 20 miles away, their point system is going to be very low, or the value that they get. So that's the first part of this. The second part, and what I think would be the most concerning, is that if you file a personal injury claim in this settlement And they talked about how they're going to help people once they get this money. If they have proven, let's say they have developed some sort of cancer, some sort of disease in the last few months, they're going to help people invest that money so that that money can last down the road through the treatment of whatever illness they may have. But if you take that personal injury now, and let's say you don't have cancer, you develop cancer 5 years down the road, that's it. You have signed off on ever suing Norfolk Southern again. So these people are going to have to make a very big decision. Did that migraine headache that they had in the week that followed, or do you want to file this in this class action lawsuit, get your point system for the migraines that you had that week, which would then exclude you when 5 years from now you find out you have cancer and you are no longer eligible to sue Norfolk Southern. So you heard they're going to have town hall meetings. They're going to walk people through this. They're going to send out a mailer so that everybody understands what's at stake here. And there is a lot at stake here, that is for sure. They would not give a ballpark, as you heard one reporter ask, can you tell us what somebody on the high end, low end might get? I asked the very specific question, well, if you used a mediator, think about somebody sitting at the middle of the table, the former federal judge that's the mediator. You had Norfolk Southern sitting on one side, and you had all these attorneys for the plaintiffs, for the people who live in East Palestine, sitting on the other. Why was $600 million chosen? What did you start out at? Did it start out at $2 billion? They said that the negotiations were required to be kept private. All sides agreed that they would not talk about what the high end and what the low end was, other than to say that Norfolk Southern started out low and the attorneys started out high. We're going to wrap this up. It'll be very interesting to watch this case move forward, see what that formula or that point system is when it comes time to give out these awards. But that they feel strongly that if everything falls into place, people in East Palestine can get these settlements by the end of the year. If we have any other information, we'll bring it to you here on our digital properties as well as on television. We won't see you on Channel 19 until 5 o'clock today. We have soccer, but we will have all of the day's breaking news and weather starting at 5 o'clock. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good day.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media.